friends. I made this Valentine for someone special and I had so much fun making it. I need to make an anniversary card for my best friend and her husband who just celebrated their 30th anniversary. So I thought I'm going to make the same card, but I'll turn it into an anniversary card and this time make you a video to show you how to put it together. So let's get stamping. I'm using the Honeycomb Happiness stamp set from Celebration, using this cute little chick. And I've already gone ahead and stamped and colored and cut out the first little bird. Now, in this card, you can see I have a second bird and it's the reverse image of this one. So I'm going to show you how I did that. Okay, this is a plastic sheet from the Stamp-A-Majig. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this stamp and I'm going to ink it with my Early Espresso ink. I'm not going to use the StazOn because I don't want this ink to dry too quickly. So I'm inking that up really well, and I'm just going to stamp my bird onto the plastic. Then I'm taking a piece of Whisper White and I'm flipping my plastic over, positioning the bird, and I'm just rubbing that ink right onto the paper. So it's not going to be a super crisp image, but that's okay. So I've got the outline of my little bird in the reverse image of the original stamp. Next, I'm taking my basic black marker and I'm going to outline around the bird. So I've outlined the bird with my black marker. So I'm going to color this with my aqua painter and my ink, and this ink that I use and the Early Espresso is actually going to bleed a little bit, but that's okay. That's what I want because I want this bird, which is going to be the girl bird, to be a little bit softer. So that's the look I'm going to get. I'm going to take my So Saffron ink, squeeze it. So I've got the ink on the lid. So I'm going to get the water flowing on my aqua painter. So I'm just squeezing it on my hand. Then I'm going to go into my ink. And I'm going to start coloring, but I'm not going to go too close to the outline first because, like I said, that's going to bleed a little bit. So I'm going to start in the center of my bird. You don't want too much water. If you have too much water, just go back and forth on your scrap paper or just kind of take some of that water off the tip. And I'm just being really careful not to hit that outline yet. Okay, so I have the yellow where I want it, adding a little bit more. And now I'm going to go ahead and go around the outline of the bird, and of course that's where it's going to start to bleed a little bit, but that's going to give me the nice little gray that I'm looking for. You don't want to go too close to the eyes because you don't want them to bleed too much. Now I'm going back into my yellow and adding a bit more yellow. Gives it a really soft look. I really like it a lot. Now I'm taking my Blushing Bride. I want to add some pink to that little bird. So I've made sure that I've cleaned this tip by going back and forth on my scrap paper and picking up some of that pink and just kind of pull it into the bird. I'm going to take a little bit of the pink and just add it to the cheek. So that bird is colored. The only thing left is to color in the beak. And for the beak, I'm using the crumb cake marker. Now I'm not worrying about the feet because I'm actually going to cut them off anyhow. So speaking of cutting, I'm going to go ahead and cut out this bird. So now I have my little bird cut out. It needs to dry a little bit, but that's how I now have the two images, including the reverse one. Now I have two pieces of crumb cake cardstock that measure 4 by 5 1/4. And I'm going to stamp them with my hardwood background stamp using the Early Espresso ink. Okay, so once that's inked up really well, I like to put my paper right on top of it, and then I take some computer paper and I put it on top and rub it. And I find that that's the best way for using the background stamps. At least that's how I prefer to use them anyways when they're so big. So there's one done. Now I'm going to do the second one the same way. There's the second one done. So I'm going to set that aside. Now I want to run these pieces through the Big Shot using my wood grain embossing folder. So I'm going to put them both in at the same time. Put them between the plates. And then I'm going to open up my platform all the way to the back. And then just crank it through. So it might be hard to see on the camera, but I now have the raised wood grain image, and we're going to sponge those in a second. So while I still have the Big Shot out, I want to cut out the oval piece in here, as well as the oval piece on this too. So to do that, I'm taking a piece of cherry cobbler. I've got my magnetic platform and a plate. Putting my cherry cobbler down. Alright, so I'm putting my two oval pieces on, one inside the other, just like that. Put my plate on top and crank that through. So now I have my oval frame, and I'll save these two pieces for a different project. Now I'm taking the smaller of the two ovals, putting it on top of one of my crumb cake pieces. Make sure it's center. And put that through the Big Shot. Again, I'm going to set this aside for another project. And now I have the top layer of my card. So now it's time to do some sponging. I'm using my Early Espresso again. Got my sponge. And I'm just going to lightly go on top. And the last thing I'm going to do to this is just take my Early Espresso again and sponge the edge. I'm going to do this to the second piece as well. Okay, so we're going to set these pieces and our oval frame aside. Now I'm going to stamp my sentiment for the front of the card using a stamp from And Many More stamp set. And I'm using the Happy Together. Just using some scrap Whisper White. And cut that out, make my little banner. I'm leaving a little bit on this end because that is going to get tucked underneath. Okay, so there's my banner, and I'm going to set that aside. Now I'm going to be stamping this flower, and it is from the Something to Say stamp set. And it coordinates with the little punch. So I'm stamping the flower in cherry cobbler. I'm going to stamp about 7 of them. I'm going to take my blender pen and pull in the color from those stamped images, just like that. Now I'm going to clean my blender pen just by going back and forth on the scrap paper, and then it's ready for my next project. I'm using the Gold Wink of Stella, and I'm going to go right on top of those petals. Just add some pretty shimmer. Okay, so those are all done. Now it's time to punch them out. What I'm going to do is just cut this into strips so that I can line up my punch with those images. So I'm going to go ahead and punch out all the rest of my flowers. Alright, the other thing I've done is I've taken some old olive cardstock with my bird builder punch, punched out a bunch of the twigs, and then I sponged the edges on both sides with early espresso. So I have my leaves and I have my flowers. I've got everything now ready to put together. So the first thing I'm going to do is adhere this piece to the front of my early espresso card base, which when folded measures 5.5 by 4.25. Okay. And then this piece, I'm going to put it on top using my Stampin' Dimensionals. Okay, I'm using a lot of dimensionals, but as you saw, I did use a lot of the edges and the corners too. So I'm just going to peel off the backings and put this on the front of my card. Okay, so I'm just going to line that up right on top. Now it's time to put the cherry cobbler oval frame right around the edge of this oval. So I'm just taking my 2-way glue pen and just going right around. Take my oval piece, line it on top. Okay. Now we're going to tuck the birds behind it. So this one I want flat on the back, and then this one I'm going to raise on top with dimensionals. All right. I'm going to put the first bird right there, and then this one's going to get some dimensionals put behind it. And I want to overlap the two birds a little bit. Just like that. And I'm not worried about the gap because I'm going to have greenery and flowers in front. So they're happy together. I'm going to take my dimensionals and cut a couple in half. Alright, so I've got my dimensionals behind the banner. I'm going to take my 2-way glue pen and add a little bit of glue to the end here. Tuck that right behind. Alright, so there's my little banner. Super cute. Now I'm taking some more cherry cobbler cardstock and my little heart punch. Use my 2-way glue pen. And I put that heart right between the two little lovebirds. And pick up a rhinestone. Put that in the center. And now it's time to add the greenery. So I'm going to use my 2-way glue pen to do that. And I also like to position these onto my card before I actually glue them down to make sure that I've got them where I want them. I'm actually going to trim off some of the stems. Okay, so I have my greenery. Next, I'm going to add my flowers, and I'm going to use glue dots to add the flowers. Okay, I'm going to take my early espresso, and I'm just going to color in the centers of those flowers. And then the last thing to do to this is just to make the flowers a little bit 3D by lifting up the petals. So to do that, I like to turn the paintbrush kind of upside down. And you can take your paper snips and then just keep folding up the petals. Isn't that cute? Totally love that.